Welcome to another episode of the Horrific Podcast. We're two friends who live in different places but share a love for scary movies. In each episode, we both watch the same movie on our own and then record a conversation together later about what we liked, what we hated, if we were scared, and maybe even some larger truths about why people watch horror movies in the first place. The theme of this season is Back to Business. The past couple of seasons have involved deep dives on horror history, and this time around we're taking it easy with all of that, and instead focusing on talking about what is most interesting to us in each of the movies that we watch. So kick back, relax, and enjoy it with us. We're just right back in the swing, I feel like, for season 17.
Yep.
The theme is back to business, doing what we know best, and that's not really looking for overarching themes or deep insights, but just watching good, maybe we'll say fall horror movies, and enjoying every bit of it. And I'm having a great time.
You know, I am too, and I think that sometimes you just gotta sit back, kick your feet up, and watch movies.
I'm taking a lot fewer notes, and I'm enjoying the movies a lot more.
Yeah. Yeah, same.
So, don't know what this means for the future, but this is a much needed sort of recharge time after last season, which was very research intensive. And by research, I mean watching YouTube videos and Googling things.
Yeah. I think eventually we'll just do no notes. Maybe we can have no note November.
And then we'll have no movie December.
Hey, that's true. You know, I don't like to watch horror during my Christmas
and then next
programs.
year we'll just tell jokes or something. I don't know.
We'll fill it out.
We'll see where the spirit moves us. So something crazy this year is I feel like Terrifier is just in the air.
Yeah.
And it's weird to me because last week we did the movie Terrifier 2.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe? Was that last week? Okay. Or was that 2 weeks ago? Yeah, whenever.
Last week.
At some point recently, we did Terrifier 2, and so that was kind of going back to that world. And right now, Terrifier 3 is about to come out in theaters. And we're also coming right off of our season where we talked about the history of horror B movies. And we got into how movies in like the 2010s and 2020s are independent movies are really going for like that make a big splash at a festival and get people talking about it.
Yeah.
And I'd say that Terrifier 3 has done that very effectively. And I've seen more buzz about it online than I think maybe any other movie, horror or not, so far this year.
Which is pretty crazy. I mean, especially considering how gory the series is in general. Like, I feel like you kind of see that stuff regarding like Scream or something, which is technically kind of gory, but not Terrifier gory.
Yeah.
But like we were even at Spirit Halloween getting a Halloween costume for my son, and like I felt like you would see like Terrifier section and then, you know, adult costumes, and then like there would be another Terrifier. Like there was just Terrifier throughout the whole thing, you know, which was cool. I mean, I had no problem with it, but it was just interesting. It was just everywhere. Everywhere you looked, you saw Art the Clown.
Yeah, he really is taking his place among the classic horror franchise villains at this point. And I didn't even realize that. Like, I knew that there was I thought it was just like a short film that he had been in before the Terrifier movies. Mm-hmm. But he was actually, I think, first made his appearance in a movie called All Hallows Eve from 2013. And that's the movie that we're going to talk about today.
It was also in Cloud 9, which was a short film before this.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
So I was getting confused a lot, I think, in the last episode. If the last episode was Terrifier 2, because I don't know either. And like I was definitely getting mixed up, and I thought All Hallows Eve was like the short, and then it was Terrifier. But I think it was Cloud 9 was like his official first, like the first time you see him. But so technically, yes. So, and also technically we have one more to watch. Or two more to watch we got to watch that one, and then Terrifier 3 as well.
Yeah, and Terrifier 3...
I'm sorry, it's called Ninth Circle. Ninth Circle.
Okay.
The Ninth Circle, not Cloud.
Cool.
Sorry.
Yeah, we'll have to come back to that. And I am in the unique position that Sarah is going to go out of town in like 4 days, which means I'm going to go see Terrifier 3 in a theater. And we may have to record an emergency episode to discuss it after that happens.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely we should.
Yeah. So anyway, that may actually post before this episode does, just kind of with the timing of everything. But yeah.
Works for me.
Cool. So yeah, this week we did All Hallows Eve from 2013. And this is another one that I feel like would have fit just perfectly into last season in talking about the evolution of horror B movies over time. Because this one was most definitely a low budget movie. It had a lot of the hallmarks of a low budget movie, but it also was one that has been very, very successful as far as sort of introducing a character that has now become a main focal point of Spirit Halloween in 2024.
Yeah, that's for damn sure. I think that, like, and I don't know this for sure, but just kind of basing it like off of this film, like Art was definitely like one of the main dudes, but it was almost like they were testing out like a couple different villains, and I felt like Art may have won the battle, which is maybe why we got Terrifier, which makes sense as far as Art the Clown character goes in itself. But yeah, I'm excited to talk about this one.
Same. I feel like it's been a long time since we did an anthology horror movie.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't tell you the last one we did. I mean, would it have been VHS?
It might have been. And that's kind of wild to me because it seems like the anthology sort of format or style would have been like, that seems like a pretty cheap way to make a movie.
It
because
does. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, especially with VHS, where it's like, oh, we're finding these tapes and we're putting them in and we're watching, but it's like on VHS, so it's meant to be kind of lower camera quality and everything. And you don't have to have like a whole 2-hour story written. You can do kind of these shorts where it's a lot easier to manage the pace and everything. So again, I mean, it just felt like this one should have, or at least would fit right in with last season.
Yeah, it kind of does. Like, I feel like there's like almost a trend with anthology films, almost the same with found footage films as well. Like thinking like with Quarantine, like they find some, or they're filming it, but the bad guy's there the whole time. And it was kind of like that with a little bit with VHS as well. The bad guy was in the house and they were watching the film. Like the creepy films didn't have much to do with it. Terrifier is the same concept technically because All Hallows Eve is the same technically because Art the Clown shows up in person. But in a way, I felt like those three stories kind of just rolled with each other instead of being like separate entities, even though they technically were. I felt like they just kind of made sense combining together, even though they were three separate films within a film that had Art show up in real life. I feel like that was just a trend, I guess, is what I'm saying. Like, it's not new what they did, but it was executed well.
I really liked the kind of overarching setup on this one.
Yeah.
I thought that was a cool way of doing it, where it's like the very cliche babysitter is at home with the two kids on Halloween, and then they find this videotape got slipped into one of their trick-or-treat bags, and they start watching it, but it's like almost like the suspense slasher, I'm alone in the house and are the kids safe and what's going on and this is creepy, but also like the anthology sort of interjected into that, and then it paying off at the end with Art actually showing up in the house. Just overall, I thought that was a really creative package for the anthology stuff. And so really the sub-stories, I guess you would call them, almost were like all they had to do was make Art seem scary. so that when he showed up at the end, it was like a huge payoff. And I think they did a good job of that. And so it wasn't like they had to maintain like some really elaborate plot or anything. It was just, all right, make this clown as terrifying as possible and then unleash him on this babysitter and these kids. Right. And that's like a pretty effective way to do an 1.5 hour long movie.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. I also thought with the babysitter that they specifically had, those kids specifically had, I'm pretty sure my parents would have hired them as well, like, and so that we would have watched the same thing. Like, that was the worst babysitter you could get. Yeah. Like, she was like battling.
She could have turned that off at any point.
Yeah, yeah. Like, I don't know, the first time, heads cut off or something. Right. Jesus. But anyway, I was just like, the whole time I was sitting there thinking, like, I think I may have had her as a babysitter when I was a kid, maybe. Super, super crazy. But yeah, I mean, it got to business, like, yeah, you didn't have to waste a bunch of time watching them go trick or treat or anything like it. And if this was, like you're saying, if this was last season, this movie would have fit perfectly for that, because it had to be smaller budget and all that until you get to the special effects of it. But
yeah. Yeah, I think the effects all came off really well, but this definitely felt low budget due to the camera quality, and then the sound mix was really not great, and the lighting wasn't great for the most part. But they really did, at least in the stuff that was on like the VHS that was being watched, they made it kind of like grainy on purpose so that wasn't as distracting. But I know for sure, like when they were in the house, it was, this does not feel like a big Hollywood production by any means.
No, there were definitely a couple of shots that it felt like it was recorded on whatever iPhone was like new at the time. Yeah. The other thing I noticed with the VHS tapes, like when you're watching the VHS tapes, God damn, I'm sorry, was they had like the special effects, like it was scratched, like film would be like back when it was projections.
Yeah, especially the last one. Yeah.
Yeah. The problem was it was just too crisp under it, I guess. Like it was almost like you could see the layer, and it was not, I'm going to say mixed, but I don't know what the actual word would be. But like I think the back, if it just looked a little bit more vintage in, I don't know, contrast or whatever, it would have been a little bit better of a setup. But I liked how it showed that. It almost felt like we were watching like an old horror movie that, whatever, drive-in theater.
Yeah, the effect they put on top of it was cool for sure.
Yeah, without a doubt.
Yeah, so this one, it had like the 3 different parts that were kind of the things that they were presumably watching on the VHS. And I think that the 3 parts were definitely not created equal. There were, I don't know, like I felt like part 3, they got it right putting that one last, because it was definitely the most terrifying of them as far as like kind of that get your adrenaline pumping, get you scared. But then the other 2, like the first one was just really weird.
Yeah.
For the most part, like it was like, I'm seeing a bunch of disturbing imagery, but I have no idea, what is going on or why. And then the second one, I didn't personally like very much, just because I thought the alien costume was not super convincing.
It definitely looked like a homemade Halloween costume.
It did, yeah.
I didn't understand where it came from either. It was kind of cool with the second one. I mean, I thought the idea was cool, and maybe it could have turned into something more, but it was just like, I felt like there wasn't much context, and it was almost like a Tales of the Crypt episode where it's just like a random little short I don't know. It just threw me off. And then the thought was like, oh, you just rip the oxygen or whatever, they were breathing out pretty easy. I feel like they'd be pretty easy to just do it again.
It was that same thing where it gets kind of hard to be afraid of the attacker when anytime the plot calls for it, the victim can just easily fight their way out of it.
Yeah. Which is kind of what you have with Art the Clown, except for he just keeps coming back. Like, yes, I feel like Art the Clown is easy to take down sometimes, but he just honestly just keeps. But
it's almost back. It's almost like he doesn't care. Mm-hmm. It's like, this is not even, a speed bump.
Or he almost enjoys it in a weird way. He gets mad about it, but he enjoys it almost. Or so, I don't know. It's strange.
Yeah, it's like motivation to take even more revenge or whatever it is he's doing. Yeah, makes it more personal.
Yeah.
But yeah, I wish they had made it more like just like a serial killer or a guy in a mask or something. I'd never really put together what the alien had to do with it, and it was just kind of goofy. But I did like kind of the big reveal at the end where she like falls down and pulls the sheet, and then it's that like super creepy painting of Art. Yeah, that was a cool way of ending a segment. I just wish that like the in between had been a little bit better.
Yeah, I agree. I definitely think it fell flat, and the difficult part about that is if you're gonna have like the idea of this film is they've watched 3 different segments on VHS. Like you got to get them dialed in, and it just seems strange. I mean, I felt like they could have maybe just extended one or the other instead. But
yeah. And I had started to write in my notes something about like, I feel like the alien was like lazy because it was just a guy in a like kind of low budget alien costume. Mm-hmm. But then I was like, well, but I mean, like technically, I guess Art is just a guy in kind of a low budget clown costume, but he plays it way scarier, and his parts are written way scarier, and just kind of the personality and acting of it, I think, was much better. And it felt like you were supposed to believe the alien was like a completely different species when it just looked like a cheap plastic mask.
Yeah. So
anyway, that's really my only gripe with this one, though, to be honest. Like, I kind of like that they didn't try to interject more story or anything to the different videos. They just made these like really creepy and like terrifying scenarios to kind of keep you on edge. And even with the first one with like the cult and the pregnant woman and everything, like I don't even have a theory as to what was supposed to be going on at that point. But it had me on the edge of my seat. It was scary.
Yeah, I mean, especially when you realize what's going on, you're just like, oh, this is
going to get a lot worse before it gets better.
yeah, for sure. And it's so that it's a movie by Damien Leone, and the last one we watched was pretty gnarly. So as far as the gore goes, so you're just like, oh man, like what's fixing to happen here? Thankfully his budget was a little bit smaller back then, so it wasn't as bad as it could have been. But
definitely not as there were still very like ambitious and very gory practical effects scenes. But in this one, they were a lot less convincing than the ones in like Terrifier 2. Like you didn't have the illusion that what you were seeing was anywhere close to real.
Absolutely.
For the most part.
Yeah, that's literally what I was fixing to say, basically. You could see like it almost seemed like the blood was like thinner or something on some of the scenes, like a little bit more watery than normal. And but yeah, you put it better than I did, so I'll just stop there.
Well, and like the, I guess the disembodied heads.
Yeah.
Like it took me a minute to assess if they were actually supposed to be seen as real.
Yeah. That's what I thought too. Yeah.
And I'm just like, oh, okay. Yeah, no, those actually are them, not just like dolls or something. So
yeah. And it was like, here's the thing, like you were saying, like I like that you don't really know much about these characters. Like I like being kind of plopped in, especially how they made this film, like the concept of like, let's sit around and watch this film. Then crazy stuff starts to happen all around you, or eventually, that's just like your worst nightmare ever. But I think the other thing too, I think one of the reasons why I enjoyed it, the second sequence wasn't that great. The third one I thought was the one had some of the worst acting out of the group personally. Like the final gal was like out of the movie. I was just not happy with that. Not make or break. You expect it, but it's just rough. That's your final act, so you kind of, but when Art starts like banging on the TV and like, that's when you're like, oh, this is bad. Like, like something,
that sinking feeling of this is about to go down.
Yeah. And then she, I think the TV shuts off or something. And then she sees Art behind her, and then she sees herself there. And like the way she was acting, like, kind of makes sense how you would act if you saw yourself on TV, like look around for the cameras and stuff. But I feel like if I had watched this film, it would have explained like Terrifier or Terrifier 2, like why he was able to come back from, being stabbed, just because this dude's obviously like, there's some supernatural thing, some evil entity that's making this guy drive, but anyway, I think the third one, even though with the worst acting, I think obviously was my favorite. This one more directly with Art the Clown, because I think this was a different actor that did Art the Clown, I think.
Okay.
And I feel it was either that short before this one. I think it was this one. That's a different one. But anyway, doesn't matter. I just felt like when they did Terrifier, the actor playing Art the Clown dialed in the facial expression so much that it was like almost, I felt like perfected it in a way, like just with the surprise look and, the mime stuff. This one, I felt like he was trying to be creepy, where Art, I feel like maybe isn't. He obviously, like, he looks creepy, all that, but like it's almost like a playfulness to him until he gets ugly. In Terrifier and Terrifier 2, with All Hallows Eve, I felt like it was more sinister from the get-go, and it's changing that was one of my is one of the things I like about Art the Clown in the Terrifier series. I like the change that they made.
Definitely got the feeling this was a very early version of the character that would get developed a lot more later on. Mm-hmm. And I think that also, like, even in Terrifier 1, he was more similar to this than Terrifier 2. So it's kind of cool to have seen like that progression over time.
Definitely evolve. Yeah.
Well, you want to ask each other some questions now?
Oh, yeah. Let's do it. And
all right. I got a softball for you.
Let's do it.
We often talk about the right way to watch a movie. Like, sometimes a horror movie is a good movie to have on in the background while you're doing Halloween stuff around the house. Sometimes it's a movie where you want to watch it at home alone late at night. Sometimes it's like one you could watch with your kids. Yep. What would be the right environment in which to watch this movie?
All right. I'm prepared for this question because I'm prepared for all questions, Dammy.
Because you let your son watch it with you late last night.
I asked him what he thought. Yeah. He's 3 years old. It's time for him to know. No. I was worried about him watching Hocus Pocus. That's the dad I am. Because there's like that creepy zombie. And like he was watching, he was going, and I was like, oh no, it's funny, but I promise it's funny. So Ernest Scares Stupid's got to wait another year. Anyways, my answer to this question is I think the best setting would be like a late night horror movie session with your best pal. During Halloween would be perfect. I think this is a good Halloween film. You kind of dim the lights, embrace the creepy, and don't take it too serious. And a bunch of snacks.
Couldn't agree more. My wife saw about 1.5 minutes of art in this movie and then went upstairs and did something else. So
yeah.
you gotta have the right mix of people in the room for this to be enjoyable.
Exactly. And I think this is a movie that if you can watch it with like-minded people, like we have this kind of made in the shade because like you and I could sit there and watch it because we both appreciate it and enjoy it. But like if you guys have anyone out there like that, just hey, low budget horror movie night, make it happen. Make it happen in the month of October, for the love of God. Oh, I got a question for you.
All right, then.
Mine's less generic. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Which of the three stories did you find most disturbing and ineffective, if any?
Yeah, that's a hard one to answer just because I feel like the first one and last one were good in different ways. The first one, though, just with, art in the subway or the train station was one thing. But then when the girls wake up and they're all like chained up, and then you think it's going to be like an escape thing and they're trying to get out before he finds them, but then they run into like that other random monster. And then there's just the whole progression of like the cult ritual and cutting out the baby and drinking the blood and everything. Like that's the one where it was just like so many random disturbing images packed into such a short amount of time that I think that one kind of wins for me. I think that there were some really good scenes in the third one, but that was probably my favorite.
So it's funny you say that, because what spurred this question when I was watching this film was I was trying to think dissect those, and I was like, this one's kind of like culty, could be witchy type in a way, and I know that you like that style sometimes, and so I was like, I wonder if, because for me it was the third one, mainly because like art was kind of directly involved the whole time, and just the silent anyway, so I was definitely curious. I was like, I wonder which way it would tip. So that makes sense.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Another one for you. What is a random detail that stood out to you about this movie?
So I think, and I don't know if I caught this before, but I feel like a majority of the time when you see art, it's quiet. There's just like weird silence happening or sharp noises happening. It's one or the other, but when it's quiet, it's super quiet. It's obviously setting it up for the loud sound to come, maybe the cut scene real fast to like him smiling or something like that. But I think it was just like how quiet some of those intensely stare down scenes are, like him looking through the TV is the best example I could give, so you guys can kind of picture it in your head. But it's just like when you see it's like, and he's looking at you, anytime you see him and he's just looking at you and he just has like a curiosity look, it's quiet, and that's what I felt like kind of stood out to me.
Yeah, that was super effective, like especially there at the end where he's on the TV, but then he looks up and it's like he's watching you watching him. That was so good. I really liked that.
Yeah. So my next question I have is, do you think the film could have benefited from a higher budget, or did the lo-fi aesthetic suit the material?
I definitely think the lo-fi was good for this one. I think that the budget would have had to have been increased a ton to get it to the point that it would have made a difference. And I guess like I mentioned before, a lot of the lo-fi video stuff I think really worked well for this one. And it meant that it could kind of cover up some of the other stuff not being quite as top-notch, like equipment-wise. And I think that the special effects were pretty good, other than, like I said, like the heads looked really fake after they'd been cut off and stuff like that. But
yeah,
I don't know how much more it would have taken to kind of polish those little details. But overall, I thought the movie did exactly what it was trying to do with the budget that it had. So I don't really know. I wouldn't have wanted to see like a remake of this with a higher budget, for example.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that was when I hit. So when I picked out that question, I was like, do I want to do that or another one? Because I was like, they obviously play into the lo-fi with the VHS tapes alone, and but also I wasn't even thinking about like, well, also like this is the first full feature film with Art the Clown in it, like first full, what do they call it? Yeah. And so it's like he's, so Damien's obviously still like getting this down, so you still got to learn baby steps before you make the big jump, which in the progression of things, which we haven't seen the short yet, but in the progression of things, Terrifier was the breakout when, that just hit the scene and kind of went nuts for a little bit. But yeah, that was kind of a difficult one. I apologize for that.
No, I liked it. No, it was very thought-provoking. So good question. Last one I have for you.
Boom. Yes.
What was your gnarly rating on this guy?
I would give it a 6.9.
Nice.
Yeah. Yeah, 6.9. And a couple of reasons for it. I think it was obviously gnarly, but it was obviously unpolished gnarly as far as the gore goes. And I wasn't where I thought Art, one of the things I like about Art the Clown is, like you're saying, that's just a guy, in makeup basically, and the facial little additions for the nose and stuff. But for some reason that worked really well. Maybe it's because it's just like an old fashioned clown. I don't know. Just the aesthetic works well. The aesthetics for the other monsters and aliens were not as good, and they looked kind of plasticky and rubbery. And I just wasn't like, if this was in the last season for B movies, this would have been a 10 because that fit the narrative for that season. For this one, I definitely say 6.9, where Terrifier is definitely higher.
I have no arguments.
That's what I'm talking about. Did Art the Clown live up to his reputation from later films like Terrifier and Terrifier 2? Or did he kind of fall flat in this?
Another good question. You're kind of killing it this week. Your questions are a lot better than mine. Yeah.
It's not a competition.
I think that...
But I won.
So, yeah, you did. You absolutely did. I think Art was great in this one. I think that this was a good kind of origin for him. I think they used him well. You saw him kind of in different aspects, which I liked. It was the more tame, just kind of mess with you Art at the train station, all the way to like the crazier. I mean, just that scene when in the third one, when she's trying to drive away and she finds the other car, and then the driver's been killed, and then she gets back in her car and she's driving and trying to figure out what to do. And then the camera is like looking straight through the windshield at her. And then you see Art lean over in the back seat from where he was like hiding right behind her. Oh, yeah. I mean, it just, oh man, they used him so well in this scene or in this movie. And I'm glad that they've kept like progressing the character in ways that felt like they made sense over time. Right. But I think that in this one, he was absolutely terrifying. I just really, really thought they created a good character, and the way that the actor portrayed him and everything else, the way they used him in the scenes and stuff, it was really good. So I think that, even if I didn't know about anything else, like if this was a newer movie, I would think, oh yeah, they should make another movie with that character because he's very compelling. Yeah. And this question, just for the record real quick, came up because and it was a cheat question because we had just done Terrifier 2. I had just watched Terrifier 1 before that, and then we watched this one. So like I was able to see where we're at technically we're at Terrifier 3 now, but like I'm able to see like a more current version. And so it was like, oh, we kind of went backwards. So like I definitely know how far he progressed because I see where he's at now. And the only thing I could think of was that he just has more time in Terrifier and Terrifier 2. Like he's the focus. He's still the same creepy son of a bitch. He's just, there's just more time in those later ones. So it was kind of a cheat kind of way of getting there. But yeah, we are doing the maximum impact Star Wars order viewing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Terrifier 1, New Hope, Terrifier 2, Empire Strikes Back.
Bam.
All Hallows Eve, Phantom Menace. You see what I'm saying?
Oh, absolutely. I see where we're going with this.
So we got to watch some All Hallows Eve 2, But I'm going to see Terrifier 3 soon anyway, so never mind. I screwed it all up. I screwed it all up.
No, but it works.
I'm not waiting. I'm seeing Return of the Jedi.
Yeah, we're just going to jump to it, man.
Yeah.
No, so it was, all in all, though, man, like, I think I just get excited over, like, oh, this is a new guy who we're going to be seeing for a while, and it involves horror movies, and it's not some, like, douche.
Yeah.
Or it's not like a prequel. This is new. Like, this, people should just appreciate it for it being, like, trying to do something different, at least, or do their own thing. I mean, this isn't a prequel. This is a post-quill. This is a
new franchise, man. Kicking it off.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. An equal?
Yeah. It's an equal. Yeah.
Yeah. Good choice. Good questions. Glad we watched this one. And I am excited to watch whatever it is we decide to watch next week, because that's what this season is all about. And I'm having fun, and I hope you are too.
Oh, absolutely. I'm having fun. We're just going to half-ass the rest of this instead of whole-assing it.
I might even quarter-ass a week or two.
Hey, I support that, man.
And that's it for today's episode. If you've listened this far, then thank you, and we hope you've enjoyed it. We're always looking for new ideas, so if you have any questions, comments, or movie suggestions, please send us an email at thehorrificpod@gmail.com, or hit us up on the IG. That's what the kids call Instagram. Just search for The Horrific Podcast. Thanks for listening.